Welcome back. Just finished watching that EG series, the EG versus Black and Yellow series right before recording this, and no spoilers, but it was an interesting series. Getting into it now, I'm going to be doing a review of Western Europeans' first week of DPC Dota. Of course, the season started last Monday. It is now Wednesday, so it's been a little bit over a week now, but regardless, I'm going to be getting into it. Starting off with the upper division, taking a look at all the matches that were played this past week and a half, then taking a look at the updated standings, and then finally ending things off with some stats, whether that be hero-based, player-based, team-based, all that kind of stuff, seeing if there's any standouts there. Starting off, Tundra looking fantastic. They start off they debuted this upper division on Tuesday last week against Alliance. They look really, really good. Notably, Alliance was one of those teams that went through obviously some very major shakeups, so it's going to take a while for that team to gel. Luckily for a lot of teams that went through those big shakeups, there is a nice 2-week break heading our way with Christmas and New Year's and all that. But Tundra getting off to a fast start. This is why in my prediction video before the season started, I was talking about Tundra should be a top 2 team. These guys might even be the top team in Western Europe right now. They looked really, really good heading into the back half of last season and in those TI qualifiers. They just barely lost the grand finals of those qualifiers to OG in 5 games. These guys stuck together so far. They've already signed a contract until 2024. And they look really, really good, I gotta say. Now, there's also the debate of, maybe the teams that they've played haven't been as strong. Like I just mentioned, Alliance went through a lot of roster changes. And even before then, Alliance wasn't one of the top teams in Western Europe. They played against Nigma later that week, but Nigma didn't have Miracle. But still, these games looked very one-sided. It really never felt like these games were ever going to tilt in the opposition's favor. And Tundra starts off their season 2-0. Alliance drops this one, but again, they went through a lot of roster changes. And starting off their season playing against Tundra, and then later this week, or last week I should say, against Secret, it was not a very good schedule to start with for Alliance. So pretty unfortunate there. Following that, we had OG versus Secret, and this was, at the time that it happened, a really, really weird series to watch. I mean, Team Secret in Game 1 drafts that really weird draft with Grimstroke mid, Wyvern off lane, and a Pudge. It was a real strange draft, and OG kind of abused that. And in the first game, it kind of felt like, okay, Secret kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit. They are still the better team. They should beat OG. And then in Game 2, OG just completely dumpstered them. It's entirely possible that Team Secret did kind of throw that first game, and maybe they weren't trying as hard as they could, but OG looked super confident, super well coordinated. They took the game pretty slow. They knew that they were playing against Team Secret, it felt like, and they didn't want to make any mistakes, so they didn't just siege high ground at like 30 minutes like that, even though they were kind of crushing. ATF, or Abar the Fucker, playing his Timbersaw, was kind of owning that game. Notably, he built a Manta style at one point. But no, they were very clean Dota, very cool, calm, collected Dota, and again, kind of extended the game a little bit longer than maybe it needed to be, but when you're playing against a team like Team Secret, you can't really fault a team for that. So OG upsets Team Secret in the first week. Again, we didn't know what to expect from Team Secret, other than the fact that when these guys are at their peak, these guys should be one of the top teams in the world. But again, it might take a little bit of time to get there. Following that, on December 1st, a week ago now, we had Team Liquid debuting against Cool Guys. And Cool Guys, probably the weakest team in this division, at least projected to be. The results kind of reflect that as well, as none of the games they've played yet have really given me anything to get too excited about. And Team Liquid in their debut, again, playing against one of the easier opponents, but they look really good. It looks like the changes are going to take a little bit of getting used to. I noticed a few moments in those games where they just quite weren't coordinating on a tier 1 level team level yet, but notably starting off your season against Cool Guys, one of the weaker teams, is definitely a real morale help for the overall team. So they start off real well. Following that, on December 4th last week, we have Team Tickles debuting their season against Nigma, who was also debuting in this series. Like I already mentioned, Miracle not there. He's going to be coming back for their next series next week against OG. But Team Tickles, I don't think many people were really expecting them to beat Team Nigma this hard. I think maybe people thought it was going to be a 50-50 matchup. Miracle's out. Maybe if Nigma was full strength, then they would have probably beaten them. But yeah, Team Tickles look really good. Again, I wasn't projecting them to be at the bottom of this division, but I also wasn't projecting them to be at the top. But so far, they're off to a really, really good start, and they looked really, really good in that series. And Team Nigma, even though they were missing Miracle, it felt like they were making a lot of the same drafting flaws, I would say, that they had earlier on, notably around TI qualifiers and the Animajor, where they just would have games that they would lose because they had like no stuns. And that's kind of been the running theme with Team Nigma for the past little while. And it seems like they haven't really gotten past that. Maybe things are different when Miracle's back. You know, maybe Miracle plays one of his classic mid heroes that has a lot of disable, like Invoker. Invoker's been a real popular hero in this patch. But yeah, a real good game for Team Tickles. Definitely not what I was expecting there. And for Nigma, they're kind of hoping for Miracle back, as things would not get better as the week went on. Later on that day, we had Team Secret and Alliance playing their second series of the week. Team Secret getting their revenge. I wouldn't say revenge directly, but they do come back and split their series 1-1. Whereas Alliance, again, didn't really look like they were coming together all that well as a team. They are a new team, and they are a team that wasn't also as high caliber as Team Secret and maybe OG in the last few seasons. But, you know, notably Alliance now off to a rough start. None of their games have really felt too close here, and they haven't won a game yet, so pretty rough. December 7th, yesterday, we had Tundra versus Nigma, and this is when I started doing my polling for every one of these games. If you guys are ever interested in answering those polls, I just ask beforehand who you guys think is going to win the game. And for the Tundra versus Nigma series, who, again, had no Miracle, 92% of you guys on 61 votes voted for Tundra, and 92% of you guys were right. Again, Tundra, again, looking fantastic. Sure, Nigma not at full strength, but you got to give Tundra credit where credit's due. They looked really clean there, and they just really gave no openings again. Like, they ran the Spirit Breaker lineup. They really abused the fact that Team Nigma had no stuns, which, like I mentioned earlier, is something that's been a recurring theme with them. And yeah, Tundra starts off 2-0. Later that day, we had Team Liquid versus OG. 43% of you out of 51 voted that Liquid was actually going to win this one, and they end up taking it. So pretty impressive win here for Team Liquid. It was a fun series. This was the first best of 3 series that actually went to 3 games. The only one that we've had actually in this whole upper division so far. And it was a really entertaining game. Game 1, OG was looking like the OG series that we had against Team Secret earlier. Super confident, super coordinated, super clean Dota. I think Yuragi had a little bit of a misplay like around the mid game there. His first death in the entire DPC, if I'm not mistaken, was him blinking into the Roshan pit with like 1 HP when right after team wiping Liquid and right after surviving on like 50 HP, blinks into the pit and just dies from Roshan. It was pretty funny. But game 2, Team Liquid kind of snapping back into the form that they were in earlier this week when they played against Cool Guys. They take that game. And then third game, man, that was a painful way to lose for OG. It was just Liquid kind of doing the X marks the spot, blink in, hit the barracks, and then get out, and then come back a minute later when your BKB's up. They did that for like, it felt like 15 or 20 minutes, and it was a real painful way for OG to lose, but there was really no counterplay for it. At one point, Matumaman had like a Refresher's Orb and an Aegis, so he had 4 lives with a Rapier and a BKB. Yeah, it was an unfortunate game for OG, that's for sure. And then earlier today, ending off our week before I did my week review, we had Team Tickles against Cool Guys, previously known obviously as Viking GG and Level Up. So these two guys both coming from the lower division, and wow, Team Tickles, again, they look really good. And Cool Guys kind of struggling to get their stuff together. They do have some other series coming up where they're going to be playing against some of the other teams in this lower division, notably Alliance and Team Nigma. But by that point, you got to imagine that Alliance is going to get better with time as their roster gets more and more gelled together. And Team Nigma is getting Miracle back for their next series. So things are starting to look a little bit dire for Cool Guys here. Now, of course, starting off 0-2 is not the end of the world. There are still 5 more series to play, but your chances of finishing in that top 4 get slimmer and slimmer as it goes on. So yeah, we'll have to see how it goes for Cool Guys. But, oh, and one more thing I should mention before I get into my standings. Out of 20 votes, 100% of people said that Team Tickles was going to win this series. So I have not seen that at all yet, and I thought it was kind of funny. Taking a look at the standings now, we actually pretty much have just 3 groupings of teams. Those that are 2-0, those that are 1-1, and those that are 0-2. So every team so far has played 2 series. Starting off with the first place, we have Tundra, Tickles, and Liquid, who are all 2-0 so far. Liquid probably having the closest series of that one against OG than the other two. The other 2 teams, Tickles and Tundra, really have not had any struggles so far. They've looked really dominant in pretty much every game that they've played. We then have OG and Secret, who have both split their series against one another, and notably OG actually beat Team Secret in that first series. And then at the bottom, we have Nigma, Cool Guys, and Alliance, who have all yet to win a series so far. I think these guys have also yet to win a game, so it's getting pretty rough there. But again, For Alliance Enigma, there's a bit of a bright side, but for Cool Guys here, they're looking like the least hopeful team here. And now that Team Tickles, a team coming from the lower division, is doing very, very well, we could end up seeing one of these big name teams from the upper division getting relegated, like Alliance, like maybe OG or Secret if they keep floundering, or even Enigma. Enigma can end up in this lower division. There are 2 teams out of these top 8 that end up in that lower division, and Team Tickles is really, really putting themselves ahead there. So, yeah, we'll see how this goes. Taking a look at some stats now, out of all these series, 17 matches have been played. Again, all of them being in just 2 games, except for that series between Liquid and OG, out of which there have been 69 different heroes picked. Beautiful. The most successful being Gyro and Spirit Breaker, who are 3-0 each. I'm surprised those heroes have not been picked up more. I'm pretty sure they get banned more often than not. Gyrocopter, notably as well, has been being played as a position 5 as well. I know Tundra has really liked running that. We then have Ember Spirit and Shadow Fiend, who are both 4-2 as well. And notably, Ember Spirit is a hero that I'm surprised doesn't have a higher win rate or isn't getting picked up more, because we've been seeing Ember Spirit getting paired a lot with heroes like Shadow Fiend or like Templar Assassin or like Kunkka, who are traditional mid lane heroes, and then they put them in the side lanes and they just hit this insane timing with early items, early BKB, early stat items, and while having this mid Ember Spirit making all the space in the world for you, it has looked pretty convincing so far. For the worst heroes, we actually have Luna, 0-5. This is one that I was really surprised about, especially because maybe not so much in Western Europe, but in a lot of other regions, Io has been a really popular hero, and teams that run the either an Io Razor or an Io Luna strat in their safe lane, they usually have a lot of success, especially paired with like a Beastmaster offlane or something like that. But apparently in Western Europe, Luna has been having a pretty rough go of it. We then have Monkey King, Dark Willow, and Beastmaster, all 1 and 3. So again, Beastmaster, a hero that's doing quite well in some other regions, not doing so hot in Western Europe. And then Weaver, again, one of the most banned heroes. I think the most banned hero in all the regions combined, except maybe Mars. 3-5. So 8 games played, only 3 wins. So, yeah. As for most banned now, we have IO with 14 bans on 17 games, which is pretty ridiculous. And that's probably where that lack of IO coming in. So you pick this hero like Luna or like Razor, but without the IO behind it doesn't feel as good, since IO has only been let through the ban phase in just 3 games. I don't think he's even been picked all 3 games, but who knows. Invoker with 11, that's one we've been seeing a lot. Very common mid hero that is very good at mid game disruption, which is very prominent in this patch. And then Mars with 10. Just narrowly missing this list, Weaver has 9 bans. So Weaver has 8 picks, 9 bans, has been present and contested in every single game. So looking at top teams now, for GPM, Tundra leads the way with 2665, pretty high. That's actually pretty impressive considering how short a lot of their games are. We then have OG with 2448 and Liquid with 2352. Leading the way in XPM, Tundra 3503. That is a ridiculous XPM, especially because they've played 2 series already. So it's not like they just played 1 series and they stomped. No, they've stomped 2 series so far, and having a 3500 average team XPM is ridiculous. That is higher than any average I've ever seen before. Maybe not in all of Dota, but like as of late, this is the highest of all the regions. Tundra has just been dominating. And again, maybe you can chalk it up to them playing against some weaker opponents, but they've looked really, really good. They've really not given up any space whatsoever. Far behind, but in second place, we have OG with 2914, and then Team Tickles with 2754. For top KDA teams, Tundra with 10.71. So they lead in all 3 categories here. We have Tickles with 6.17 and Liquid with 5.49. Now looking at top players, we have Yurgi leading the way in GPM from OG with 729, Matu in second place from Team Liquid with 690, and then Nisha on Team Secret back in the carry role, obviously, with 669. For top XPM, we have Skeeter from Tundra with 822. We have 9 from Tundra with 759, and we have 33 from Tundra with 745. So top XPM and top KDA is all Tundra players. The top 3 in both of those categories, all Tundra. Tundra has been dominant. Top KDA, Skeeter, 34. That is ridiculously high. You'd think that that's not going to be a sustainable number, but he's already played 4 games, and it's still as high as 34, which is pretty ridiculous. We then have 9 with 16.86 and 33 with 16.33. Very fitting number for him. For Radiant and first pick for the win rates there, Radiant is actually 7 and 10 so far, so Dire being slightly favored here, but that is traditionally because whenever you're on Dire, you usually have last pick because last pick tends to be a lot more favored. In fact, every single time there has been a Radiant team this patch, in this tour, they have had first pick. So First pick and last pick have that same ratio. Whenever your first pick, you've won 7 times, last pick 10 times. So yeah, pretty impressive there. This is one of the most fun regions, and I'm really, really excited to see who ends up getting relegated at the end of the season, because of course it's still early on, but like I mentioned, we've already seen Tickles kind of shoot ahead of the pack, and Cool Guys, maybe, you know, they're the team coming from the lower division, they're kind of suffering a little bit, but then other than those two, there's just a lot of really, really big name European teams here, except maybe Tundra, but I really don't see Tundra finishing bottom 2. They have looked so dominant. So, you know, maybe it's Alliance, maybe it's Nigma, Secret, OG, Liquid. One of those teams might end up getting relegated. We'll have to see. Now taking a look at the lower division, where we have almost finished week 2. So there's plenty of matches down here. I'm going to try and breeze my way through this pretty quickly. Debuting things off last Monday, we have Brame versus Entity. They win that series 2-1. Notably, Brame has looked really, really good. They, again, are the team coming in from the upper division after getting relegated last season. They did lose tiebreakers, so there was a chance that they stay in the upper division, but they were up against Tundra and OG, so very unlikely. They started off their season very well. They look like one of the strongest teams, and I wouldn't be surprised if they end up in the upper division for that next tour. Following that, we had Team Bald making their debut against No Bounty Hunter. They look really good. I know that Team Bald has been getting a lot of praise from some of the other more professional teams. I say that because, you know, Team Bald obviously doesn't scrim. They don't have a coach. They just kind of play out pretty casual. But they've been getting a lot of compliments from, like I said, a lot of these better teams and more professional teams, saying that they shouldn't be underrated. Now, they don't exactly have the record to show for it so far. They get off to a strong start, but their next 2 series would end up being a little bit more rough. But regardless, on December 1st, we had Chicken Fighters 2-0ing Ghost Frogs. Ghost Frogs has been another team that's going to be kind of struggling this season. They're off to a pretty rough start. And Chicken Fighters, they've looked really good. They were bottom 2, I believe, in the last DPC of the lower division. And you can't even really tell that they were there last season. We then have Chillax with their debut against Into the Breach. This is obviously a different Into the Breach than last season. They look really good in their debut. They win 2-0. A lot of 2-0s. We've been seeing this in pretty much every region. A lot of these best of 3 series just go 2 games. On December 4th, we have Brame against Bald. So this was notably the series that one of the members on Brame was complimenting Bald, saying that they did very well. Again, Brame, one of the strongest teams in this region, so this wasn't necessarily a super, super difficult series win, but they were still pretty impressed with Bald at this point. So they go up 2-0 on the season from that point. We then have Entity versus Ghost Frogs, and again, Ghost Frogs kind of struggling a little bit, but Entity looks really good in this series. They did lose that first series against Brame, but again, Brame, one of the top teams in this region, and Entity still looks really, really good. They just weren't able to overcome Brame. They were close, though. That series did go to 3 games. Following that, we then have Into the Breach versus No Bounty Hunter. No Bounty Hunter, another team that's kind of struggling a little bit. Into the Breach gets a nice little win here. And then finally earlier today, we had Chicken Fighters versus Chillax. Chicken Fighters, again, looking very solid. Chillax, they end up splitting their series that they've played so far. They're 1-1. And then Entity, again, they look really, really good. Bald, unfortunately, playing against some of the stronger teams in this region. And it really sucks to say, but having 2 losses might be all that it takes to not finish top 2. Especially if Brame ends up sweeping the rest of the season, and then we have Entity, if they only lose their entire season to Brame, then having 2 losses is too much to even finish top 2. So that starts slipping away a little bit. So, yeah, taking a look at the standings now, leading the way, like I'd mentioned, we have Brame and Chicken Fighters, who are 2-0 each. I'm excited for those 2 teams to meet. Following that, we have Entity in 3rd place. That is 2-1 so far. Entity looking like one of the strongest teams. I'm also excited to see them play against Chicken Fighters. In 4th place, we have Into the Breach and Chillax tied at 1-1. We have Bald, that is 1-2 right now in 6th place. And then at the bottom 2, we have No Bounty Hunter and Ghost Frogs, who are 0-2 so far. So again, not the end of the world starting off 0-2, but those dreams of finishing in the top 2 start getting a little bit thin when you're starting off 0-2. So if these guys are more so fighting for just not getting relegated as opposed to getting upgraded, the matchup against these 2 is going to be super, super important for maybe determining which team ends up getting knocked out and which one doesn't. Taking a look now at some stats, out of 20 matches played, Radiant is 12-8, so 60% win rate for Radiant there. And for first pick and last pick is actually split. It's quite the opposite, actually, from the upper division, which is something that we've been seeing quite a lot. In the upper division, Dire and last pick has been favored, but in the lower division, it's been Radiant and last pick getting favored. So again, Radiant traditionally one of the better sides in this patch, and last pick has been notably better. But usually in the upper division, like I mentioned, you're only getting it last pick if you're on Dire. The top heroes, out of which there were 71 that have been played in these 20 games, so slightly higher, but of course slightly more games than in the upper division. Disruptor, 5-1. Disruptor has been a really polarizing hero. In some regions, this hero has like a 10 or 20% win rate. In other regions, like this one, he has near an 80% win rate. So pretty fun to see that. We have Shadow Demon, who's 3-0, and then Invoker, Earth Spirit, and Wraith King, all 3-1 so far. Again, Invoker, one of the more popular and most picked heroes right now in the mid lane, whenever not banned. He seems to be one of the only mid laners that's able to keep up with the current pace of the game that isn't a spirit hero right now, that also still has a pretty stable lane. For worst heroes, we have Snapfire, who is the most picked hero in this lower division, 25% win rate on 12 games. It's been a pretty rough go over for Snapfire, but her popularity kind of stretches across numerous regions at this point. It just seems that she hasn't been having as much success in this lower division. Dark Willow 0-4 and Treant 0-4 as well. So again, two more heroes that we've been seeing quite a lot. Treant usually paired with some sort of tempo carry like Luna that just needs a support that's able to buff her in the mid game. But again, Luna in the upper division at least has not been having very much success at all. For most banned now, there were 66 different heroes banned, so just over half of the hero pool in total. Weaver with 16 bans out of 20 games. Very, very high. We then have Io, Monkey King, and Invoker with 13. Nothing out of the ordinary there, including our last one here, Mars, with 10 bans on him. Taking a look at teams now, the top GPM being Brain with 25-26, which is pretty high, I will say. Chicken Fighters with 24-47, Chillax 23-80. We then have Brain leading the way in XPM as well with 31-30. So that is already a pretty high XPM. And you could just compare that to the upper division leader, which is Tundra right now. 35-03, playing against some of the best teams in the world. Sure, they haven't played against some of those best teams yet, but it's still a ridiculous amount for Tundra. I just can't get over it. Entity with 29-80, which is still very high as well, and then Chicken Fighters with 28-81, leading the way in KDA. No real extravagant KDAs in this leaderboard here. A lot of these are very maintainable and very good KDAs here. 4.74 for Brain, Chicken Fighters with 4.61, and Chillax with 3.92. For top players right now, we have Charlie with 744 GPM, Lil Pleb with 702. We then have Shad with 700 GPM. For XPM, we have Stormstormer leading the way with 806, very, very high XPM. Usually you don't get that kind of XPM without playing heroes like Templar Assassin or Meepo or some super farm heavy carry mid laner like that. We have Charlie at 750, and then Nefrit at 749, so just barely behind him. And finally, ending things off with KDA, we have Bora Ninja with 9.89, very high. We have Aqua with 7.36, and Wish with 7.06. So, yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been my week, like 1.5 review of Western Europe. I'm going to be doing a review like this every single Wednesday if you're at all curious. Tomorrow is my North America upload, so if you don't want to miss that, feel free to subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow with my North America review. Bye.